Hello everybody and welcome to A Question of Property. My name is Lucia France and I'm here to host your panel of property experts here on Zoom who are here every week answering your questions. So we have John Howard, property mogul, expert developer and Ipswich advocate. He's been in the industry more than 40 years and he has written 3 books on the topic, including his most recent one, Buying and Selling at Auction. So morning to you, John.
Morning, Lucia. I don't know where mogul comes from. I think that's a slight exaggeration, but good morning.
Good morning. We also have Stefano Lucatello, our legal brain of the panel, and he is a senior partner at Kobalt Law International Property Lawyers and an expert on buying and selling property in Europe. So morning to you, Stefano.
Morning. Don't forget the book.
And the book, of course, yes.
Listen, I showed you the book. I even showed the book last week. I haven't got paid for that or anything yet.
We did go over the books last week, but there's no reason why we can't do that as well today.
In the post, John, don't worry.
Thank you.
And last but not least, of course, Paul Mahoney, best-selling author, award-winning property speaker, and head of Nova Financial Group. And if I may say as well, the much-needed and appreciated buffer between the heated debates of John and Stefano.
He's the only real author in the group. The voice of
reason, I call him. The voice of reason.
We were talking about potential recessions yesterday, and somebody mentioned that John's first one was in 1908, so quite a bit longer than 40 years ago.
I think that might be a slight exaggeration there.
Exactly.
The hair transplant's doing well, John.
Thank you. In fact, can I just say, Mrs. Howard is getting a bit too confident with my hair because it's always the third. It's like a property deal. It's the third deal. The third deal people do, they get into trouble with because they get overconfident. And my wife's done my hair twice now, so I'm very concerned on the weekend. Yeah.
There we go.
Well, it's looking fine as it is. I think we've got a lot of home haircuts going on at the moment.
Yeah,
so, guys, speaking of going to the barbers, etc., I wanted to ask you just as our question to kick things off. We're still in lockdown here. I can't remember what week we're on, but what's the first thing you're going to do that you can't do now after lockdown?
Go to the pub for a pint.
Good answer. Yeah.
I saw an article yesterday. There was people. They raided a pub and they found people hiding in the cupboards, and I think I'm just about at that stage where I'm willing to hide in a cupboard for a fresh pint of Guinness.
Typical Australian. That should be lager. My big thing. There's a lovely cafe in Ipswich. Lovely cafe. It does the most wonderful coffee, double roasted. I want to sit there and have my breakfast.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm missing a good Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm with you on that. It'd be nice to just be around other people again, apart from the people.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
In my house. Okay, moving on. We will go to Paul for our first question here today. So, Paul, I wish to purchase a property for investment purposes very shortly in the south of England. Whereabouts would you recommend for me to buy?
Okay. Well, usually when we get asked questions like that with a set criteria in mind, to be fair, it's a fairly broad criteria. It is the south of England, but my first question would always be why? Why the south of England? And what are you actually trying to achieve from this investment? So sort of try to change the focus away from, find out why they're saying the south of England, but change the focus away from the location and more so toward the goal that they're aiming for. And I think generally we find that probably this person's saying the south of England because they live in the south of England, but that doesn't mean that you need to invest in the south of England.
Right.
And if there's better investments elsewhere, I would say there's extremely strong logic to invest elsewhere. Okay. But to answer the question, London's a very difficult place to justify from a buy-to-let perspective because property prices are high and yields are low. There's some half-decent areas on the fringes of London that you can make stack up. But I think probably my favourite city in the south of England is Bristol.
Okay.
It's better priced, yields are better. It's a substantial city in its own right. If I was to say I had to invest in the south of England, I'd probably invest there. But I'm not investing in the south of England. Right. I'm investing in the Midlands and the Northwest because I feel as though there are stronger fundamentals and stronger driving factors in those locations for them to perform well, but also be more sustainable through, you know, bad economic times.
Also, Bristol, I know a lot. There's quite a lot of film industry there as well, isn't there? And you know, people.
Bristol's a great. Bristol's great. I've got some flats in Bristol. Clifton's great, and actually, I'm in the process of negotiating to buy, or am not sure now, a block of 12 flats in Clifton, which is a great area. And I don't totally disagree with Paul, and I've bought all over the UK, especially up north. Not so much more recently, but certainly in the past I've done a lot up north. But what I would say, if you can stick an hour and a quarter by train from London, you know, there's some great places that actually aren't that expensive. I could mention Ipswich, which is only an hour away, but there's other places, Peterborough, there's all these other places which you can get a decent yield on, and some of them, you know, considering you're only an hour by train, are relatively cheap. You could live in London, and I bet Paul, you know, he lives in a lovely part of London, Paul does, but I bet getting into his lovely office in the centre of London, it takes him probably 40 minutes. Well, it's only an hour from some of these other places. How long does it take? It takes me
15 to 20 minutes, it takes me.
Well, that's because you live incredibly close to where you work, which is, you know, but a lot of people don't.
But I suppose that would be my slight counter-argument, John, to what you're saying there. And I think this, you know, absolutely no offence whatsoever, but this might be showing the difference in our age and the preferences of different age groups.
Controversial.
No, honestly, I'm not being derogatory in any way. But in the past, people have been more than willing to travel an hour to and from work, and I'm very confident in saying that younger generations don't want to do that anymore, and there is much more of a focus on central living and travelling as little as possible.
Yep. But the trains are still absolutely packed, Paul, or were before COVID. True. I agree it might change.
Could I just ask John there as well? What if you, except for Ipswich, are there other places in the south that you would recommend, or Stefano for that matter?
Well, I think you know, there's so many places in the south, and I accept that where Paul's talking about the Midlands and the North, Paul's done incredibly well. They've had an awful lot of growth in the last 5 or 6 years, but you know, you have to question whether that will continue. Who knows? Some people think they know. I accept that. I don't think anyone quite knows what's going to happen going forward. I mean, even where Stefano, Hull has been in the down in the doldrums for many years, but actually has picked up in the last few years and actually hasn't done too badly. And I had a block of 16 flats in Hull. I sold a bit early. I bought them very cheap in a very nice area of Hull. And there is a very nice area of Hull, by the way.
There are many nice areas in Hull.
There is.
Really?
And I probably sold a little bit too soon, but there's lots and lots of areas. Do your research. You've got lots of time at the moment. Get on the internet, do your research. Employment's going to be so important going forward. So finding a town that won't lose employment, where perhaps it's got a big Amazon or something like that to support the town's economy is very important.
Let me just say that you were talking. I was going to say Clifton and St Paul's. I mean, the two diametrically opposed areas of Bristol. I mean, Clifton has gone through a regeneration over the last few years.
It has.
And
yes.
St Paul's, which was one of the roughest, most drugged up areas of St Paul's, minority ethnic area of Bristol.
That's where it had all the years and years ago. It had all the riots, didn't it, St Paul's?
Yeah. So it's going through a change. I mean, Lloyd's Bank moved into Bristol in its port area many years ago and started the transformation of Bristol. And Bristol, just like Hull, is a port. So it's one of these cities that relies very much on its port activity. So and it's it's a very strong city. One place that I'd recommend, and I have three friends who live in this area, is the area between London and the Midlands, which is Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes and Bicester, Towcester, Northampton itself. Nice posh areas, and of course it's the centre for engineering, for motor racing engineering. So you've got 4 or 5 of the motor racing teams based out there on the A43, and it's a rich area. It's a developing area. One of my colleagues in fact, my partner David, he was from Northampton, has a house there, and the renting, the yields, he says over the last 5 or 6 years have gone up substantially in Northampton, Towcester, that sort of area. It's sort of a town, but it's not a town. It's in the countryside. It's well connected by rail, by road, and it has the industry which supports it in that corridor of the M40 where some of the motor racing teams are going across to Bicester, going across to Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes, especially Milton Keynes. I mean, Milton Keynes is like Marmite, isn't it? You either like it or you don't like it. It's one of those towns that was constructed on a rigid grid, like the American cities, and it was a trial city, and some people like it, some people don't.
Milton Keynes Bowl, great venue there, for a music venue, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a very good equestrian. Addington Equestrian Centre is very good, just outside there as well. That's a very wealthy area.
And there's
outside Milton Keynes is very good. But anyway, good to get some property advice in the UK from Stefano. I shall make a note.
Absolutely.
See, I'm not just only international. I do listen to what goes on in other parts of the world.
More than a one-trick pony.
Absolutely. Right.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's move on then to our second question, which is for Stefano. I'm currently getting divorced. This is not me, just yet. And I own a property in Italy in my personal name. Has my wife any rights to the property, and could she force me to sell it?
Well, the answer to the question is yes. And the property, fortunately, is not in joint names. But just because it's not in joint names doesn't mean to say that your wife, soon to be ex-wife, won't have a corridor to attack all or part of it. So if let's presuppose this gentleman is a United Kingdom citizen, United Kingdom resident, and he's going through an English divorce, then the court, the family court, the High Court or the County Court may make a property separation order, which means that all the asset, let's go back. When you get divorced, one of the things you have to do is you have to fill in one of the forms, which is a property assets and liabilities form. I think it's called an E5 or something. Not that I've done matrimonial law for many, many years. And anyway, you have to set out what you've got and what you haven't got, and the debts and the liabilities and all the rest of it. He will have to show in his assets, or if his solicitor is a proper person, he'll tell him, because many solicitors along the way don't, and I've come across the 2 or 3 of them where English solicitors have said, no, you don't need to mention your property abroad. You do need to mention every asset you have in every part of the world when you're doing a divorce. So let's say he mentions it. She could then say, well, I want to have that sold as part of the matrimonial settlement, either because she wants a lump sum or because she wants a monthly order for the kids or for her, or whatever. So yes, the answer to the question is that, notwithstanding the fact that it's in Italy, notwithstanding the fact that it's in his own name, an English court could say, put everything into the pot and sell it, because either she is to get a lump sum or she's got to get a financial order for herself or for a child or children, and that may have to be taken into consideration. But he'll certainly have to declare it. That's the first point. And I have to say that over the years, having been an international lawyer for many, many years, English solicitors, because not through deliberate actions, but because of almost negligent advice, have said, no, you don't need to mention the property abroad, because we are only dealing with an English estate here, an English grouping of property or whatever. It's not the case. English solicitors have got to mention everything you have, whether it's pensions, whether it's.
Oh, Stefano, I think
Yeah.
we lost your audio there for a second. Could you just?
Oh, sorry.
You said whether it was pensions or.
Yes, whether it's pensions or whether it's property, whether it's bank accounts, whatever it is, you must bring those into account. And then the starting point on a divorce in England is 50-50. Then the judge goes backwards and says, well, how long have you been married? Is it a short marriage of 1, 2, 3 years? Is it a longer term marriage, 5, 6, 7? Or is it like John, he's been married forever, and he's been married 40 years.
Doesn't feel like that,
whatever.
Of course.
Eh?
It doesn't feel like that, of course. It's only 20 years. I got married when I was nearly 40. I was single till then, so I didn't do too bad.
Oh, well, congratulations.
So there you go, that's the answer. Yeah, the answer in short is yes, it could be taken into consideration, but the first thing is that your solicitor must declare it in the assets that he says to the other side that you have.
And what would happen if it wasn't declared then?
It's contempt of court. Contempt of court, because she will know what happens. I mean, it's daft really, isn't it? Because she will no doubt know, and they've no doubt been on holiday to this place, let's say.
Yes.
So she will say to her solicitor, well, hold on a minute, our property in wherever it is in Italy is not mentioned here. He'll go back to the other solicitor. The solicitor will then give his client a hard time and say, look, you're putting me in a difficult position.
Yeah.
The position is, of course, that if the solicitor doesn't get what he wants out of his own client, he has the right to step back and say, well, I'm sorry, you're putting me in a breach of law position. I can't continue to act for you, and I'm going to withdraw. But if he does, if the lawyer is complicit with this non-mentioning, then it will go before, it would be daft anyway, because the court would say, bring it into account, and you know, otherwise there'll be a financial penalty order against you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Anything else to add there, guys?
Don't think so. I think Stefano's the expert on that one.
Fantastic.
Don't get divorced.
Don't get divorced.
Don't get married.
Oh, dear. Right, moving on to John's question. Now, John, what would you consider to be the best strategy for purchasing property coming out of the COVID lockdown?
This is a question I'm getting asked an awful lot, and it really still depends. As I always say, it sort of depends really on what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. Because if you're not interested in that topic, it might be a refurbishment, it might not, whatever, then you're not going to do a great job. However, I do think in this market, you have to be a little bit more flexible than you have been in the past. And for me, I can only speak for myself really in this. And for me, I want to be fleet of foot. So I don't want to get into any big developments, which are going to take 2 or 3 years to do. I want it in and out within 6 months, because we don't know where this is going. And if I'm in and out within 6 months, even if it drops a little bit and I've bought right, and it's all about buying right, Lucy. If you buy right, if the market drops a little bit, you're still going to be okay.
Okay.
So if you can really buy right in this market, I want to be in and out quickly. Alternatively, if you're looking at long-term buy-to-lets and you can buy at a yield, instead of buying a yield of 5 or 6%, you can buy at a yield of 8-9% as the market, then I think that's fine too. And because I think over 20-25 years, you're going to be sit down. It might go down a little bit in the next year or two, but over 20-25 years, you'll say, what a great buy that was. What a great time to buy.
So again, going back to what the purpose of the property is and what the reason for the investment.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and also what most people have a niche, and you may need to widen that niche in this market because it may not be suitable strategy in this market. You do need to be flexible, a bit more open-minded perhaps than you have been.
Okay.
Is that called a mixed portfolio, John?
Yes, yes. Well, mixed portfolio, of course, would be a mixture of probably commercial, residential, and some bit of land maybe. So that's what a mixed portfolio would consist of. And again, people do ask, what is a mixed portfolio? Well, that's it gives you a bit of flexibility, and also you're spreading your risk. If you've got rental stuff, you've got property you're going to buy and sell, and you've got commercial. Although of course commercial at the moment, like I said, in one of the other programs we've done, only 30% of my commercial tenants are paid. And interesting, it's the big national tenants I've got who haven't paid.
Right.
They're the ones you think, they're the ones, of course, Lucia, you expect to pay because they're big, and you think, oh, well, you're proud of some of your big tenants. And of course, they're the ones who've let you down. So there you go.
Yeah.
John, what's the up-to-date on non-payment of rent by tenants, commercial and residential? Hasn't it been extended to November?
The residential, you can't boot anyone out for 3 months. And on the commercial, normally, we, as you know, we can go in with with commercial, we can go in within 21 days and take possession if they haven't paid the rent up front, which is fantastic. However, I think the government, I'm not quite sure the government said the same or not, 3 months. But even if they haven't, you'll be pretty brave to go in and take possession after 21 days. Because you've got empty rates to pay straight away, and if it's just a blip and you can support them or do something to help them, why would you want to vape? You would never want to vape commercial property at the moment. It's the last thing you want.
I think that's an important point to clarify there, Stefano. It's not a situation where tenants can just stop paying. They don't have a non-payment window.
No.
They generally will have to pay it at some point, make up for what they haven't paid at some point in the future. It's just that landlords can't evict tenants. They're not being forced into accepting non-payment.
No.
I'd heard yesterday that this had been extended to November. That's why I asked the point. I didn't know whether it was correct.
I haven't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me. It's not official, I don't think.
Are you saying there, Stefano, that maybe we're going to be in lockdown longer than we perhaps expecting?
I think that this social distancing and the lockdown will continue even though certain areas, and there's a big debate today on which areas will be released before others and to what extent. I mean, you've got the schools, which seems to be going back in September time.
Goodness me.
Michael O'Leary of Ryanair was on today saying that you can't put people 2 meters away in an aluminium can, whether it's a railway carriage, an underground carriage, or a plane. So I think we're going to find that air travel and train travel in the future will be completely different, especially air travel. I mean, Virgin's up for sale. British Airways are cutting 12,000 staff, and we've got a mega changeover. I don't think Ryanair and EasyJet will exist at the end of this year if it continues the way it's going.
Right. Thanks very much, Stefano. A little bit off topic there, but still interesting. Okay.
Well, not entirely off topic, because actually, if you want to fly, Lucia, to Italy or to Spain, and suddenly, the airport you're going to fly to, you can't go anymore, and you've got a house out there, or you're buying a house out there, it makes a lot of difference.
Well, yeah,
we were saying previously. Sorry, Lucia, interrupted you, but we were saying in a previous edition that on many occasions people buy property abroad, following where Ryanair and EasyJet and small airplane carriers like these go to, because it means that they will then have a regular carrier route to their home. Michael O'Leary was saying this morning that many of the regional, he didn't say anything about the foreign ports that they go to, but the regional ports in England, the airports in England, he said that they would be pulling out. He said that they can restructure Manchester, Birmingham, Stansted, but they can't do anything on the smaller airports. And it will be a problem. I mean, and the problem is also that the British government, the United Kingdom government, is not giving these air carriers any support. But he was saying, and interestingly enough, I mean, Alitalia, which has gone into and out of nationalisation, has just been renationalised and brought back into government control by the Italian government. I mean, it's been a loss leader for many, many decades, Alitalia, good aircraft carrier, but, it's been nationalised. But the British government's not giving the same support to British Airways.
Good. I don't think we need to.
Yeah, well, I mean, were any of you meant to be going away during this period before? Because
Going away, we're working.
Well,
we're working.
I did have some flights booked to go to Spain for a week, and I can't remember now if it was EasyJet or Ryanair, but they allowed us to change the date of the flight to a time in the future, but then pay the difference. And obviously we kind of thought, well, when's the next sort of holiday time? August. But I don't even know if we're going to be able to use those now.
No.
Remember, there's a big difference legally, and there's a big debate on refunds and vouchers. Many aircraft carriers are giving people vouchers for use in the future. They are not the same as a refund, and there's a big legal hoo-ha going on about what people are given. Some aircraft carriers are giving people vouchers which have no legal validity. They may pull that from one day to another, and then refunds. And if you can, I would suggest you get a refund, which is money back into your card. And the ultimate thing is, of course, is pay everything by credit card, because then you've got recourse to go to your credit card company and then get the money back from the credit card company under the consumer credit rules.
Yeah,
good advice.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Okay, we'll go back to Paul then for your second question today. We are running out of time slightly, so we'll try and make these answers a bit concise. So, Paul, I've got 4 buy-to-let properties. I'm very concerned that not all of my tenants will pay going forward. Could you please advise me whether I should sell one of the properties in order to reduce my loans and cover my interest on the other properties?
Okay. Look, I think selling a property is a bit rash. That would be your last resort, I would have thought, depending on how serious the situation is for this person. I'd say, first off, communication with your tenants is key. Don't just assume they're not going to pay, because most tenants are still paying. So communicate with them, find out their situation, encourage them to pay, but work with them if they need to arrange some sort of payment plan, of course. Keep in mind that lenders are also giving, what's being referred to as mortgage holidays. It's not actually a holiday. You still have to repay it the same way as tenants have to repay any unpaid rent. You will need to repay any unpaid interest on your mortgage, but lenders are being flexible in that regard. So if it seems this person is concerned about being able to service their mortgages, and if their rent wasn't paid, they wouldn't be able to service it, well, they should be able to get some flexibility from their lender on that, specific to COVID-19. And I had a conversation with a client about this yesterday, that they were concerned about asking for a mortgage holiday because they thought it would affect their credit history or their ability for mortgages in the future. And that's not my understanding at all. It's not the normal financial hardship application. It's specific to COVID-19.
Okay.
And there's an understanding that because a lot of tenants aren't paying, therefore a lot of landlords need flexibility on their mortgages. So don't be afraid to have that conversation with your lender. Depending on the properties, the last thing you want to end up having to do is sell one to cover costs. Yeah. That's generally the reason you've bought the assets in the first place, is to provide passive income and to have them grow in value so you can build a portfolio. And by selling one, you're kind of doing the opposite.
Right.
So I would only do that as a last resort. Try to get your tenants to pay. And the best way to do that is to communicate with them, make sure they feel as though you're looking after them and you're doing the right thing by them. Make them very aware that this isn't a time that you can just not pay rent. The rent will need to be repaid in the future. And if they realise that actually I might have to pay double rent in September, October, November, they're probably less likely to not pay rent now.
I think that's a lot of the problem with the word holiday, isn't it? It's not really not a holiday. It's more like a delay, I guess, isn't it?
It's a deferment.
Yeah. Deferment.
Deferment.
Yeah.
The best.
That's a
we've
word.
had a lot of discussions on this in law. It's called a deferment because people will have to pay it. It's like not paying your credit card. At some point, you will have to pay it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and although there is a ban at the moment so far as evicting tenants, that ban will be lifted at some point.
Yeah.
So, obviously as a tenant, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're likely to be evicted once this is all over.
Yeah, of course. That's great. Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, Stefano, let's move to your second question then. This person currently owns a flat in Gibraltar. Will any of their rights change after we leave Europe officially on the 31st of December?
Well, I have to say, Lucia, that Gibraltar is very close to my heart. I spent 6 years in Gib, 7 years nearly there. Gibraltar qualified lawyer. And I was there from 91 to 97, nearly 98. It's a very strange area. It's like Marmite said before, you either like Gib or you don't like Gib. I loved it for all sorts of reasons. And the position of Gibraltar is very strange because it has its own self-government, it has its own parliament. It is not part of the United Kingdom, but it is a UK-dependent territory. So it governs itself for everything except for defence. And that sort of thing. It's not part of the common agricultural policy. It's not part of the Schengen area. So it was the only UK territory, overseas territory, that became part of the European Union. And it's been a bane of the United Kingdom and Spain's governments over the years, because Spain wants it back. The United Kingdom won't let it go. The Treaty of Utrecht of 1666 said that 98% of Gibraltar citizens had to vote in favour of secession to leave the United Kingdom's grip. Nobody wants that. But strange enough, when we had the 2016 referendum, 99% of the 19,000 people that are there at the moment voted in favour of having closer ties and remaining in the European Union.
Can't believe that many people would be wrong, can you really?
Well, I mean, 632 people voted in favour of staying, of exiting the European Union, and the rest of them, 19,000 odd, voted in favour of a closer tie with the European Union. I mean, it's 3,000. It's like having Brighton, but having it 3,000 miles away. It's very much English. They speak a dialect of Llanito, which is a word of English, a word of Spanish, and a word of dialect. It was first colonized by the Genoese in La Caleta in the south part of Gibraltar, which faces Morocco. And it's a very different mentality. It's an English mentality, but they're very foreign, as it were. And its status will be argued over for many, many centuries, I think, to come, decades, centuries. We don't know. The answer to the question is we don't know, because what happened was that Virginia, May, said when she was negotiating that Gibraltar's rights would be protected. And it transpired that they did so much, but we don't know where we are now because it's been left in abeyance and nobody has discussed this any further. So we don't really know what the rights of Gibraltarians are going to be. And we don't know whether...
I'm pretty confident, Stefano, that we're going to come out on the 31st, and that'll be it. No deal, no nothing.
Right. So basically, it's all a bit up in the air at the moment.
Yeah.
It's very much up in the air.
Would you buy there at the moment on that basis?
Well, I mean,
Stefano?
it's very interesting because, over the years, having done a Place in the Sun exhibition, the exhibitions we do every year, all of a sudden, 5 years ago, Gibraltar came up on the radar where it's never been on the radar. I mean, it's been considered as one of those poor areas you wouldn't buy in Gibraltar unless you've got a particular reason to do so. And all of a sudden, they've adopted a strategy. Many builders have adopted a strategy of reclaiming land from the sea, like in Monaco, and they've done the same thing. What they've done is I think when I was there were 3 marinas. There are now, I think, 5 marinas, and some of the land that was some of the area was sea and marina has now been reclaimed, and they're selling flats, fantastic flats if you look at them, 500, 600, 750,000 pounds. And they're now marketing these flats that have come out of nowhere, these beautiful building blocks, and they're built on the same way as I say in Monaco they've done. And they're marketing them for these astronomical sums. And people are going there. Why? Because of course it's the heart of the offshore gambling. When I was there, I was just working for some of the big gambling institutions that were coming into Gib, because they've got all their offshore gambling headquarters there in Gib, because they can get tax-favoured concessions. They don't pay any VAT. Gibraltar is out of the VAT area. It's out of the customs union, so it doesn't pay VAT. It has its own regulations for tax. Very interesting area, and it's very useful. I still use it as an offshore lawyer. I still use it as part of my triangulation exercises, where you use Guernsey, Gibraltar, and maybe Malta, because using that sort of triangulation, you can give clients who are ultra high net worth individuals protection, legal protection, from paying taxation or deferment of taxation. So it's a very interesting area. It will always retain its attraction for people who want to leave the United Kingdom, have part of the United Kingdom still there, but still be in the heat, and Spain, and the access into Spain as well. You can just go across into the border from La Linea, and you're into Spain, and you've got the rest of Europe.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stefano. We have only got just under 3 minutes left. So, John, I'll go to your question next.
That'll be difficult for him to keep it short.
I know. What do you consider to be the most volatile part of the property market currently?
The most volatile part of the market is a great question. I think if you're halfway through a development, it's difficult because you don't know what you're going to be selling for at the end. You've already started, so you're committed, so you've really got to finish, because if you finish, you've got a few options. You can either rent it, hopefully, if you have to, or you can still sell them. If not, if it's half finished, guess what? You'll be selling it to people like me, and you never want to be doing that if you can help it. Right.
Okay. Anything to add there, guys?
Yeah, just a point. So, assuming people are with the assumption, well, we pretty much are in a recession, it seems. We're certainly going in that direction. If people are assuming the property market is going to be hit badly by this, and I don't think anyone knows,
just so you know.
Okay, I don't think anyone knows the answer to that, but it will be the smaller towns and cities that are driven by one company or one industry where those jobs dry up that will struggle the most, and it will be the major cities that are more robust and sustainable.
Thank you
so
much.
Just one point before we go, Lucia. I had a client yesterday who rang me and said that he's decided that he's going to change his buy-to-let, which has 1 tenant in it, and it's expiring in the next few weeks. He's going to get him out, and he's going to turn it into an HMO. Right.
Okay. Thank you so much for the advice there, guys. Stefano Lucatello, John Howard, Paul Mahoney. I've been Lucia France. If you've got any questions, email us, ask@aquestionofproperty.co.uk, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.